You're watching Euronews Tonight. I'm Mariam Zadi, and these are the headlines this hour. Moving east, President Zelensky says Russia is amassing tens of thousands of soldiers for its offensive in the eastern part of Ukraine as he calls for more help to survive the war. Austria's Chancellor says his talks with President Putin were direct, open and tough as he becomes the first EU leader to meet Russia's leaders since the war began.
Here in theCUBE, we take a look at the latest online attempts to discredit Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky.
And Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are back on the campaign trail as the race to become France's next president tightens up. Good evening. Fighting rages on Ukraine's eastern flank as Russian troops ramp up their assault on the region. Russian-backed rebel forces in the self-proclaimed People's Republic of Donetsk warned they will intensify their military efforts in Ukraine's east. And with depleting supplies of ammunition, Ukraine's army says it's preparing for a last battle to keep the besieged city of Mariupol under control. However, video from Ukraine's Azov military unit claims to show Russian tanks being destroyed in the southeastern port city. Addressing South Korea's parliament, President Zelensky warned that the death toll there may be significant.
Mariupol
is destroyed. There are tens of thousands of dead. But even so, the Russians do not stop the offensive. They want to make an example of Mariupol.
Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer has held direct, open and tough discussions with President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, becoming the first European leader to do so since the start of the war in Ukraine. In a 90-minute-long sit-down, the Austrian leader informed Putin that this was not a friendly meeting and called on him to end hostilities. Nehammer previously stated that Austria is militarily neutral, but insisted that it had a clear stance on Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine. Well, for the latest on the ground from Kiev, Sergio Ferreira de Almeida joins us live. Sergio, good to see you. So, you've been in Kiev now for a few days. How are people coping there? What sort of daily life are residents being able to have now?
People here in Kiev are trying to get back their normal lives, even if it's quite complicated, as you can imagine. The shops are still closed. Most of the banks are still closed. Some of the companies are coming back to work, but remotely. But they believe that they need to come back to normal life because the Ukrainian economy is struggling to survive. According to the Analytical Center of Kiev School of Economics report that was delivered today, the total damage of the war to the Ukrainian economy ranged between $500 billion and $600 billion. And so Kiev people want to get back their lives and to get back their jobs to contribute to the national economy. Anyway, they don't forget that the rest of the country is still in war. Most of the cities of the east and the south are still in war, and even in Kiev, the Kiev mayor Vitaly Klitschko stressed today that the retreat of the Russian troops from Kiev doesn't mean that they give up of Kiev. They are still willing to control the capital of Ukraine.
Okay, Sergio, thank you so much for updating us live from Kiev. Well, for more now, our correspondent Sasha Vaklina joins us now in the studio. So, Sasha, we were hearing there from Sergio as well, live from Kiev. Now, President Zelensky says that Russian troops are, of course, amassing in the tens of thousands for its offensive in the east. Troops in Mariupol, though, they've been under siege for weeks now. They're saying that ammunition is running out. So just how important is it for Russia to take full control?
Well, now it's fair to say that this is the key target for Russia to take Mariupol. And there are a few reasons for that. First and foremost, of course, this is geography, because Mariupol would be the place that would give Russians the passage, this land route from Russia to the annexed Crimea. And if you look now at the map of all the war updates, you would see that lots of places there are already under control of Russian troops, but Mariupol is still holding up. And Ukrainian forces there in Mariupol, it's been weeks and weeks and weeks. They've been holding up that defense. Mariupol is surrounded by Russian forces, but Ukrainians do have control still over central part of Mariupol and also the southwestern part of Mariupol. In some developments today, in the latest intelligence update on Ukraine, the UK's defense ministry said that the warning that Russia in the past used phosphorus munition in Donetsk, and therefore this raises the possibility of their future employment in Mariupol because of the heavy fighting. As well, some military command people from the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, the breakaway, the self-proclaimed parts of Ukraine, they said today about Mariupol, and this is, I'm quoting the Russian media that reported on that they said that all the Ukrainian forces that are still in Mariupol, they should be blocked in one of the buildings of a steel factory, and then the chemical weapons would be used on those who are still defending Mariupol.
Gosh, and Sasha, we know, of course, the devastation that this war, this offensive has caused and is causing. Now, the World Bank, it's warning that Ukraine's economy will shrink by 45%. So what will Ukraine need to rebuild back?
Well, first of all, Ukraine would need the war to be over to rebuild. There are some plans already that Ukraine's working on. There are plans for Ukrainian business and Ukrainian investors. And for example, for a few weeks now already, there is a new tax regime, very, very simple tax regime for the businesses in order to survive, to keep them going. They don't have to pay as high taxes as they used to do that before the war. That will last at least now, and then they're going to be also prolonged for a little bit. Now, there's also the plan for rebuilding what has to be rebuilt in cooperation with the European Union. And for this one, a separate agency will be set up, the agency between Ukraine and the European Union, and that one will assess all the damage and we'll see how to attract investment and businesses in order to rebuild, because some cities in Ukraine, like Mariupol, like Kharkiv, like those towns around Kiev, they have been completely destroyed.
They have indeed. Well, Sasha Vaklina, thank you so much as always for updating us on the latest as well. Thank you so much. Now, the two remaining candidates in the French presidential election, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, have less than a fortnight to sell their vision to voters. The first round produced a tight result, with Macron less than 5 percentage points ahead of Le Pen. Macron was in his far-right rival's northern heartland today, hoping voters will embrace his policies in Tehran. The runoff is a repeat of the 2017 contest, but there was a celebratory mood at Marine Le Pen's party headquarters. Their view is that their candidate's focus on the cost of living pressures facing France's households is a recipe for success on April 24th. Well, for the latest, let's now head to Paris and talk to our international correspondent, Annelise Bourges. So, Annelise, lots of sort of mixed feelings being felt in France, of course, today, following those results from Sunday's vote.
Absolutely, a mixture of excitement and relief even, but also frustration and disappointment, especially among those voters that chose Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the big surprise really this year, the leader of the far left, who scored his highest such score ever, gathering more than 20% of the vote. I asked some voters here in the French capital what they thought of the results and also what they expected for the next 2 weeks.
It's over for me. It was either Mélenchon or no one.
We've had 5 years of forgettable leadership, and it's going to continue.
I think, as usual, people are going to vote against someone rather than for someone, which is disappointing.
The two candidates are known in France. I don't think there is a need for Macron to launch a movement, and perhaps now he can clarify what he put in his manifesto. Macron has been here for 5 years, and Marine Le Pen has been around politics for even longer, so I don't think there will be much movement.
And of course, all major newspapers here in France today featuring those divisions, those differences. The newspaper Le Monde showing this patchwork of the map of France with each of these different colors representing a different candidate. Yellow is for Emmanuel Macron and brownish grey is for those cities, those regions who voted for Marine Le Pen. There's quite a lot of red dots there in the south of France. Those votes went for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Le Monde highlighting that this is going to be an even more uncertain act two of the elections. Libération, which is a left-wing newspaper here in this country, saying that this time around it's really dangerous. This publication here talking about the fact that there is a real chance that the far right could indeed become the new part of the new government of France. And Le Figaro newspaper also featuring this new duel between Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron. Of course, all attention is now, all focus of this campaign is now on the two main contenders. They are going to be heading to the second round, and according to the latest polls, is going to be very, very tight.
It definitely looks tight indeed. And Annelise, Emmanuel Macron, we know that he will need to focus hard on the campaign in the coming weeks. And right now we understand that he's in Le Pen's heartland.
Indeed, Emmanuel Macron was not wasting any time. He threw himself straight into the campaign early this morning, fresh off that first round victory, after being criticized for leading a short and somewhat disorganized campaign until now. He went to Le Mans, one of France's poorest cities to the north of Paris. It is considered a region to vote, to have voted for the far right over the last few years. He went there to meet voters and to talk to them, but more importantly, to listen. Emmanuel Macron's team saying that he really wanted to get to know them and get to know their problems, their aspirations. He heard quite a lot about unemployment, about inflation, and of course about the high cost of living here in this country. Emmanuel Macron, who last night said he was going to do everything in his power to convince voters, both from the right and from the left, that he is now the only viable option for France.
Right, well, let's come to his rival then, Marine Le Pen. Now, the results show that she is a massive threat. But what could her presidency then mean, not just only for France, but for Europe?
Well, it would definitely mark a schism. Many here in France believe that Marine Le Pen would focus inward, and that would compromise many of this country's relations and its place on the international arena. I put that question to Benjamin Haddad from the Atlantic Council on what exactly a Marine Le Pen presidency would mean for France, but also for its place in the European Union. Take a listen.
One of Emmanuel Macron's most important challenges in the next 2 weeks is to uncover the reality of Marine Le Pen's European program. In 2017, she ran explicitly on a platform of Frexit, and she realized that the vast majority of the French don't want to leave the European Union and don't want to leave the euro. So now she appears as a moderate, but if you look at the detail of her platform, all of her proposals on the European Union would de facto amount to blocking the European Union and then leaving it. She's against Schengen. She's against the supremacy of European law on national law. She's against a lot of things that are currently, I think, at the core of the European Union that would de facto block its functioning. I think it would go completely against the sort of momentum that we've seen in the last month, where we've seen an incredible spur for European rearmament, for solidarity, for steps in the favor of European defense like we've never seen in the last 30 years in the wake of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Having France step out of the European Union right now would be, I think, a tragic mistake.
So a tragic mistake for some, and a viable option, the real choice for many others. Marine Le Pen, who is in her third attempt to become president of France, and according to the polls, she has never been this close.
OK, Annalise, we leave it there, but thank you so much, as always, for updating us on the latest on the French presidential elections. EU foreign ministers have discussed further possible sanctions on Russia, as well as the current situation in Ukraine. The bloc sanctioned Russian coal last week, but the member states are still divided on gas and oil imports. But the EU's Foreign Affairs Chief Joseph Borrell said nothing is off the table.
It's easy for some member states that are not using Russian gas to say that they are ready to not use Russian gas. But for others, which are heavily dependent, it's not so easy. Everybody has taken conscience of the big risk of this strong dependency on energy, and we have to fight in order to decrease this dependency as quick as possible, developing renewables and looking for other suppliers.
Well, let's bring in Shona Murray in Brussels for more on that meeting of EU foreign ministers. So, Shona, EU foreign ministers chief Joseph Borrell said nothing is off the table when it comes to what could be sanctioned, but no decision yet on oil and gas today.
Yeah, I mean, I think he made the point fairly clear there that the difficulties and the obstacles are because some member states are wholly reliant on Russian oil and gas imports. Countries like Germany, Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, Italy are very, very dependent on it. So it's easy for some countries to say that they will support sanctions. Having said that, as he also said, as you heard there, that nothing is off the table. So the question is how and when would those sanctions apply? We saw with the coal, for example, there was a 3-month lead-in period. When would sanctions against oil and gas apply? That's a key question. How soon can the EU diversify and get oil from other sources? That's obviously a key question. And also from a political perspective, we know that Hungary, for example, the government there said that any energy sanctions are actually a red line for them, so they're not supportive of it at all. But at the same time, I think we can say that the momentum is building within the EU for energy sanctions. We heard from Charles Michel last week at the Parliament in Strasbourg, Ursula von der Leyen, and others have said it. So it will happen at some point. The question is when. And it wasn't really supposed to happen today. That was really only a discussion because there is quite a bit of disunity on the issue at the moment.
And so, aside from sanctions then, Shona, Borrell said that ministers were discussing tackling Russian propaganda and what he called the battle of the narrative. Now, we know, of course, the Austrian leader has been meeting Vladimir Putin in Russia today, saying he held direct and open talks with him. It's a tough line to walk for EU leaders, no?
It really is, particularly when you look at when the Austrian Chancellor is going to Moscow. There's obviously a question as to how fruitful that meeting could be, given that EU leaders and the West have been trying to negotiate with Vladimir Putin for nearly a year now in terms of de-escalating the Russian troops on the Ukrainian border. There's a concern that Moscow will obviously use this visit as a way of showing that, that they have friends in the EU and that they can still manipulate the EU. And there's a concern about generally other countries using Russian or parroting Kremlin lines about the real performance of the Russian army in Ukraine. So it's a concern. There's certainly a question as to the practicalities and whether this visit is sensible or not. It remains to be seen. But of course, overall, publicly, the EU is saying, any chance to engage with Russia to try to end this senseless and cruel war is welcome. But really, nobody has any feeling that that anything good is going to materialise out of it.
All right, well, Shona, thank you for updating us from Brussels on the EU latest next steps. Thank you so much. Now, an altered video has surfaced online claiming to show Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking of his reliance on banned substances. Matthew in the Cube has more.
Marianne, we've seen continued efforts by pro-Russian supporters to spread false claims about the Ukraine war and discredit Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And these claims have become more diverse and at times more bizarre. A 2019 video of Zelensky has been reshared where it is manipulated to seem that he says he takes drugs, specifically cocaine. This video was first posted on Facebook by a Georgian user, but has since spread to other pro-Kremlin channels, garnering thousands of views. And what's more, in recent days, more images of Zelensky rubbing his nose have resurfaced on social media. People trying to present misleadingly the image that Zelensky is a drug addict. While that video interview did take place, it has been mistranslated and it has been taken out of context. The video is readily available on YouTube. It was taken, as I say, in 2019 when Zelensky was an actor and comedian and had just announced his intention to run as president. He is asked what keeps him going, to which he replies, "I am not on cocaine, I do not take drugs. I snort coffee because I am addicted to coffee." Two versions of that clip have been edited together to misleadingly create the image that Zelensky is a drug addict. He does not say that he loves cocaine. It's not the first time we've seen Ukraine's president being targeted by this kind of misinformation during the Ukraine war. And Mariam, as the conflict continues, we're likely to see more manipulated clips like this one being shared as war propaganda.
Thank you, Matthew, and that is quite an unbelievable story. Now, London's Royal Albert Hall was the venue for this year's Olivier Award. Stars of the stage turned out for the prestigious ceremony as the industry celebrated a year in which performances returned to theatres following COVID lockdowns. Charlotte Lamb has a story.
And the Olivier goes to Eddie Redmayne.
Life certainly seems to be a cabaret for British actor Eddie Redmayne. He picked up Best Actor in a Musical at the Olivier Awards in London for his role as the MC in the production of Cabaret. His co-star Jessie Buckley also took home the gong for her depiction of Sally Bowles.
This year's Olivier for Best Actor is awarded to Hiran Abisikera.
But it was the star of The Life of Pi who won the biggest prize of the night.
I am a result of a lot of love and generosity of many. I would like to think of you all right now. I hope you're proud of me.
The jubilant night of theatre, the first Oliviers since 2019, also had some touching moments. Opera singer Ksenia Nikolaeva sung the Ukrainian anthem, reminding the world of the battles beyond the red curtain. Charlotte Lamb, Euronews.
OK, well, that's it from us, but we will leave you with a no comment from the Vatican, where Pope Francis celebrated Mass on Palm Sunday, marking the start of Easter week. Thanks for watching Euronews Tonight.